Hey y'all, so there's been a lot of people that are wanting to know my birth story, wanting to know what caused me to go into labor, what's wrong with the twins, if there's anything wrong with the twins, and what happened to baby Austin. And let me just say this, I understand where y'all are coming from. I promise I'm not upset, I'm not mad for anybody asking me those questions. I just have not been ready to talk about what happened. It's taken me a while to get to where I can even feel comfortable talking about it, and now that I am comfortable talking about it, I definitely want to share my story. I don't believe that we go through things in our lives for us to just keep them to ourselves, because if my story can help the next person, then my purpose is to share that story with everybody. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. This is definitely going to be a very long video, but bear with me. We're just gonna go ahead and jump right in it. I gave birth on October 27th to two of the most handsome, beautiful, just precious little baby boys I have ever laid my eyes on, and it was an experience and something I hope and pray to God I never have to go through again, because it was a lot. So before we really get into it, I feel like I need to backtrack just a little bit. So about 3 weeks prior to me giving birth to the twins, I went to the labor and delivery floor of the hospital because I thought that my water had broke. So we were sitting at the house and I just essentially literally just started gushing water, and I was like, I think something's wrong, like my water broke. And I actively was feeling like what I thought to be at the time contractions, because they were a little bit stronger than Braxton Hicks, but I just vividly remember my stomach just kept getting so super tight, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a little painful, but it wasn't like unbearable or anything. It was just like a very bad period cramp kind of. So we ended up going to the hospital and they hooked me up to the monitors, and I was not contracting, and they listened to both of the baby's heartbeats, perfect heartbeats. They checked their amniotic fluid in each of their sacs, and their amniotic fluid was measuring amazingly. And although all of this was happening, I was still actively leaking, you know what I mean? So they ended up testing the water that was coming out of me to see if it was my water breaking, and all of the test results came back as negative for it being my water breaking, and they essentially just chopped it up to I was peeing on myself. So keep in mind, like, I have never peed on myself in any of my pregnancies, and I'm not saying that maybe I wasn't, but I am saying I knew in my heart and soul that I was not peeing on myself. And I just kept trying to tell them, like, I don't know if I'm peeing on myself, because I have no sense of me getting ready to pee. Like, I vividly know when I have to use the restroom, and I'm not having that sense or that feeling at all. And they was like, well, it just happens, you know, like, you're carrying two babies, they're pushing on your bladder, like, it just happens. And I was like, okay. So throughout the next couple of weeks, I was having more consistent Braxton Hicks, and I went to my doctor, I think once before I actually gave birth to the twins. It was actually the week before I gave birth to the twins. I went to him and I was like, look, I am going through pads left and right because I am leaking that much. Like, I'm not 100% sure that I'm peeing on myself. Oh no, you're peeing on yourself. Okay, so he ended up checking the baby's heart rate again, and their amniotic fluid in both of them was measuring perfectly. So there was really nothing that he wanted to do. He didn't want to send me down and monitor me or anything, so they sent me home. So on October 26th, that night, I started feeling a little bit more crampy. And then on October 27th, I literally was woken up out of my sleep. I remember at 12:01 a.m. So literally first thing on October 27th, I was woken up and I was like, oh man, I'm cramping really hard. But I was still able to kind of sleep through them. I remember waking up and getting my daughter ready for school, and the contractions were a little bit more painful. And I was like, oh man, I remember telling my husband, I was like, man, these Braxton Hicks, they're painful. Like, something's off. Something's not right, but it is what it is. Maybe they just are Braxton Hicks. I've never been pregnant with twins before, so I just chopped it up to be in just that. If you've seen my morning vlog from October 27th when I was getting Nicole ready for school, you could physically see that I was having contractions. To this day, I have still only been able to watch that video like 2 times. It's hard for me to watch that video for some weird reason. Around like 8, 9, something like that in the morning, I texted my husband and I was like, man, like these contractions, they're picking up. I'm starting to track them and I'm almost positive like I'm actually in labor right now, like something's wrong. And I've always been super dramatic, you know what I mean? So my husband was like, okay, well, just keep tracking them. And no hate against him at all. Like, I'm very dramatic anyways. And so I just sat there, I tracked them for like 2 hours. And then finally I was like, look, I'm going to have to call somebody to come take me to the hospital because something is in fact going on. I know something is going on. Something in my gut is just telling me something's wrong. And by that time I was running a fever and I just was feeling very, very sick. So I ended up calling my cousin Kendall and she came and picked me up, and me, her, and Layla went to labor and delivery. So they asked me what was going on and I was like, I'm actively having contractions. Something just does not feel right. I feel like I'm literally burning up. Like I feel like I am running a high fever right now. I said, just something's a little weird. I said, the boys haven't been moving that much either. Like I'm not feeling that much movement, but I know for a fact that I'm having contractions. I've been timing them for a couple hours, and for a couple hours, my little timer app has been telling me to take your tail to the hospital. So they all was just kind of laughing there for a minute until they realized like, oh no, she's being serious. Like, let's go ahead and get her checked out for real. I went back into the little room. They hooked me up, monitored me and everything. The boys' heart rate, beautiful, both of them. Their amniotic fluid, still beautiful. I'm still actively just leaking, peeing on myself. And anyways, so I was looking great overall, and I was like, am I running a fever? And she was like, no ma'am, you're not. She said, but you definitely look like you're hot right now. And I was like, I am. I said, something's, I don't know, like I feel like I'm burning up. Like I feel like my skin is on fire at the moment. And she was like, oh my goodness. She said, okay. So, you know, some time went on. They monitored my contractions and stuff, and I was in fact having contractions. They monitored me for about an hour, and then finally she was like, okay, so we're just going to check you out. I want to see if maybe your water is breaking. So they did the test on me. They ran the test results. Like literally you just stick it in there and within seconds it'll tell you whether it's your water breaking or not. It tested negative for my water being broke. And she was like, I said, no, I'm having contractions, like it's starting to pick up, it's getting a little painful for sure. And she was like, okay, well I'm just gonna check to see if you're dilated. I was like, yes, of course, like do whatever it is that you have to do. Like I feel like something is wrong and I just want to make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And she checked me and I was 2 centimeters dilated. And then she really checked my water, like opened me up kind of, and made me cough like really, really hard. Like it's probably the hardest cough I've ever coughed in my life. I thought I coughed up a lung, girl. But she made me cough. She did see that I was actually leaking amniotic fluid. So I was 2 centimeters dilated. They immediately, from the moment she was like, you're actually 2 centimeters dilated, you're in active labor at the moment. It was like, it went from being just a nurse and a doctor to there was like 15 people in that room. And they were hooking me up to all these monitors. And I will never forget the one nurse. I'll never forget her. She was so sweet. She was so amazing, but she just looked at me in my face and she could actively tell that I was really scared at the moment. And at that point, my grandparents had already got to the hospital and they got my daughter from Kendall, and I had Kendall come back into the labor and delivery room with me until my husband could get there. And the doctor looked at me and she was like, I'm going to let you know that this is going to be a very stressful journey for you. This is going to be very traumatic. She said, because we are giving you medications to slow the laboring down. She said, but your laboring has already started to pick up. She said, and I'm not saying the medications won't work, but just in case they don't work, I just want you to know I have been through this. My baby was also born at 25 weeks and it is very traumatic from the birth to the NICU experience. She said, it's going to be traumatic and I want to prepare you for that. And in that moment, I knew that I was going to be giving birth to my boys. I knew that the medication was not going to work that they was giving me. I just knew that my twins were going to be there. I appreciate that nurse so much because she was the only person in that room of all of these people that looked me in my face, acknowledged that I was scared, and told me just straight up, it's going to be okay, but this is also going to be very traumatic and you should prepare yourself. I will never forget that, because I am very much so a person like, just tell me how it is and I can deal with the emotions and the feelings later, but I need to know how it's going to be. And she did just that. She didn't try to make me feel better. She didn't try to anything, you know what I mean? She just gave it to me straightforward, and I appreciate that more than anything. And she was the only person in that room, I feel like, that stopped for a second and acknowledged that I was scared. So at this point, my contractions definitely started to pick up. Like, they weren't unbearably painful, but they were definitely, I need to grip the side of the bed kind of painful. Like, they were hurting a little bit. So my cousin immediately was like on the phone with my husband, where are you at? How soon can you get here? Like, things are progressing and I'm a little scared. So they finally ended up wheeling us up to the labor and delivery room about an hour after they determined that I was in fact in labor. And it was still from the moment I got into that labor and delivery room until the following day, really. I had so many people in and out of that room with me. I've been through labor and delivery before, and I've never had that many nurses and doctors in a single room before. So they were trying to figure out like what could have caused this to happen, and I just kept telling them, I don't know. I wasn't doing anything. I literally was just laying down on the couch. I was laying in bed last night. I didn't do anything over the top, you know, the day before, even the week before. Like, I kind of just laid around all week. So they finally sent the person in that was actually going to be delivering the babies, and she was sitting there. She is another person I'll never forget. She literally sat on the foot of my bed from the time I got into labor and delivery until she delivered the boys. She sat there with me and she just held my hand. She rubbed my leg for me. She was rubbing my stomach for me. Like, she was so sweet. So my husband ended up finally getting there about 30 minutes after I finally got up to the labor and delivery room, and he got in there and he, I think, realized the seriousness of what was getting ready to happen. And it was not just a scary situation for me, it was also super scary for him. And if there's anybody that is strong in all of this, it has been my husband. My husband he's very strong. He's a very strong individual. So we were sitting there. It was like maybe 45 minutes after we got into the labor and delivery room, and I was like, I want an epidural. I want it right now. And they was like, we can't give it to you. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't give me the epidural? Like, what do you mean? They was like, well, Miss Kendall, your blood pressure is really low right now, so we don't want to give you the epidural, because if it gets too low, or I don't know, it was something with my blood pressure being so low, girl. I don't know the medicalness of it, but they couldn't give me the epidural, and that was probably the second worst news that day. So instead of the epidural, they gave me a little baby comb, and I had that baby comb bent every which way but straight. You hear me? The people that sit there and they're laboring and they're just gripping onto a comb and they're like, oh, it helps distract the mind. Listen to me when I say this. They are lying. They are lying straight through their teeth, right in your eye. They're lying. There was nothing that was distracting me from the pain. It hurt really bad. That was like the icing on top of the cake for me, okay? I'm sitting there being told that, yes, you know, you are in active labor right now. Your twins are probably going to come. We might not be able to stop the contractions. And now you can't have an epidural. But we're going to give you a comb. I was like, put a cherry on top. So after a little bit, we were sitting there and I felt my water finally fully break, and I looked at the OB and I was like, my water just broke. And she looked down, she was like, okay, yeah, your water did break, but she wanted to test it real quick first. So they came over there, they stuck it in there, they did the little testy test, stuck it in the tube, it came out negative, and she was like, how is that test coming back negative? It's very clear her water just broke. So they took it off, sent it to like a lab or something, they tested it, it still came back negative. Every single test that they ran to determine whether or not my water broke showed up negative. So within these past 2 months, almost 2 months, I have been having to constantly remind myself, this is not the doctor's fault. This is nobody's fault. This is just something that happened, because I felt like for the longest time that I needed somebody to blame, and really there's nobody to blame. The doctors were just doing their job 4 weeks prior whenever my water did break. They just did their job. You know what I mean? Everything was coming back negative, and I have to continuously remind myself of that, so that I don't get mad at people that don't deserve to be mad at. So once my water broke, she actually checked my cervix again, and I was still 5 centimeters dilated. And at this point, I am like screaming basically, and I am just literally trembling. I'm in so much flipping pain. It was the worst pain in the world. And I finally looked at her and I was like, I can't do this no more. Like, these boys are coming, like they're coming. I know that I have to be more than just 5 centimeters dilated. So she was like, we're going to get you the epidural, because at that point my blood pressure went back up. And she was like, we're going to get you the epidural. The anesthesiologist, he signed off on it. He's going to come down. He's going to give it to you. He gave me the epidural and it did not work. The epidural was not working at all. And I just remember them sitting there just pushing this epidural, just continuously giving me more and more and more and more and trying to make it work, and it just never did. So they finally actually brought up the possibility of having to do an emergency C-section, and I was okay with anything. You know what I mean? I was completely fine with anything. And anyways, so they kind of like stepped to the side a little bit and everybody was talking, and they was like, well, we're just going to go ahead and take you down to the OR in case, you know, the twins decide to come quicker than what we think. And they rolled me down to the OR, and I really don't even remember being rolled down to the OR. I was in that much pain. But I do remember being in the OR, and I remember finally my husband coming in, and he was just sitting like right up here beside me, and I just remember being able to look up at him and seeing his face in such a scary moment was so relieving for me in that moment. And then I also remember the anesthesiologist was on this side of me, and he was like, do you need more? Do you need more? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? I'm like, I can feel everything. The epidural is not working. So like, I just continuously remember him in my face, not in a bad way, but in my face, like, we're going to get it to where you can't feel it. We're going to get it to where you can't feel it. And I personally don't remember any of this, but my husband was telling me that they were sitting in there kind of debating whether or not to open me up to do a C-section. And Garris was telling me that like the doctors essentially was like, if we open her up to do the C-section, she won't live. And I can't even imagine. I don't remember hearing that at all. I don't remember any of that. And I can't imagine what was maybe going through his mind whenever he heard that, or something along the lines of that. I can't imagine it. I can only imagine how that must have felt for him to even hear that. So we started pushing, and I vividly remember something coming out of me. I just don't know what it was. Well, at the time, it was actually Austin. Austin came out. And when he came out, he was not breathing, and they actually had to perform CPR on him and give him, I believe, Narcan to get him back. And I do remember baby B when he came out. I remember him coming out because I remember that cry. He cried immediately. They didn't have to do anything extra for him. They obviously had to work on him and stuff, but they didn't have to bring him back. He was breathing. He was crying. I remember that sound. It plays all the time. But I don't remember Austin coming out at all. I don't remember him coming out, and I can't imagine what my husband was going through mentally in those moments and how helpless he was feeling. And I'm so thankful that it was not me sitting in that chair, because he said that he watched them perform CPR on Austin, and his eyes were kind of just everywhere. He was watching what they were doing to Austin, you know, trying to make sure that Austin was going to be okay, but he was also trying to check on baby B, make sure that he was okay, but he was also trying to be present with me to make sure that I was going to be okay. And he seen them perform CPR on our baby, and I can't imagine. Thank God that I didn't see that, and I did not know that until like a day later, because that would have been a lot. So needless to say, I felt absolutely everything. I felt it all, y'all. So I remember the anesthesiologist was like, did the epidural ever kick in? And I was like, no, it never did. Like, I felt everything. And he was like, okay. So we finally got back to the labor and delivery room. They wheeled me back, and I was sitting there, and I started feeling very weird, and I started acting very weird. I still am very not 100% aware of how I was acting, but between my aunt, my cousin, and my husband, they all was like, no, you were definitely acting weird. My aunt actually thought that I had an emergency C-section because when I came back in the room, like there was just no color to me at all. She said I looked very, very, very pale and I looked like I had just had surgery done. And I remember sitting there and I was shaking really, really, really bad, like just like freezing to death, kind of shaking really bad. And I remember trying to communicate with my husband and communicate with my aunt and cousin, like, something is not right. I don't feel okay. Something's wrong. I think I'm gonna die. Like, I vividly remember trying to tell my husband as he was sitting there on the side of my bed holding my hand, like, I think I'm dying. And I was not saying that. I was saying a lot of gibberish, basically, just random things, and I was stuttering really, really, really bad, and I was shaking uncontrollably. And they was giving me all kinds of medications at this time, but if I'm being 100% honest, I really don't know what all they was doing at this time. So I continued to sit there and shake and stutter for about an hour and a half, maybe even 2, maybe even 3 hours afterwards, but I think it was more like an hour and a half after the fact. And I finally calmed down enough, and the actual person who delivered the babies came in the room, and she was sitting next to me, and she started like drilling me almost on what all I have done within the past couple of days. And I was like, I haven't done anything. I've not done anything extra. I haven't done anything like that could have warranted this. I haven't anything. Like, there's nothing I could have done. And I was like, I literally have just sat at home and watched my kid. Like, that's all. So then my aunt actually brought up, well, she was leaking pretty bad. Like, she was peeing on herself a lot. And she was like, tell me more about this. And I was like, yeah, well, I was in here like 3.5, almost 4 weeks ago, because I thought my water had broke, and they sent me home and said that it wasn't my water breaking. I was peeing on myself. And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm serious. Like, they did the test and they came back negative. She was like, well, yes, all the tests that we ran today on your water as well, it all came back negative as well. And I was like, yeah. She was like, well, I believe your water did in fact break a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, what do you mean? You mean to tell me that I was right the whole time? I don't know how you have continued to carry the twins like you have without going into labor a lot earlier. I was like, I don't know, I'm not a medical professional, you know what I mean? I just come to my appointments. And she was like, yes, I believe your water did in fact break, she said, and it's amazing that your body allowed you to carry the boys an extra good couple of weeks, she said, because your boys have a chance at this point. And I was like, thank God, you know what I mean? Like, thank God. I said, I'm so thankful for that. And she was like, yes, ma'am. She said, you've gotten really sick. You're really sick. But she never exactly said what. And so I finally asked her, I was like, well, what could have caused this? And she was like, well, you have an infection. You ended up getting an infection in your uterus, and that is what caused you to go into labor. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't done anything to warrant the infection. And she was like, no, it was the fact that your water broke a couple weeks prior, she said, and you held on to the boys for, a couple of weeks. She was like, so that is what caused you to go into labor, was an infection of your uterus. And I was like, okay. So I was finally starting to feel a whole lot better throughout the night. And then the next morning, another doctor came in and she talked to me, and she was sitting there and she was just casually saying stuff, checking on me. And she was like, yeah, she said, you gave us a really big scare yesterday. And I was like, well, yeah, I think like a 25-week delivery is a little scary. And she was like, well, no, she said, your body became extremely septic. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but okay. And my aunt was actually like, wait a minute. Back up. What? And she was like, yes, ma'am. Miss Kendall's body became very septic. She could have easily died last night. And I was like, I need to go to medical school. What do you mean? So yes, that is what sent me into labor. I had an infection of my uterus because my water had broke a couple of weeks prior, and for some odd reason, my body continued to carry the boys until I was 25 weeks pregnant, and my body ended up becoming septic that morning. My organs was slowly starting to shut down, and I'm so glad that I actually listened to myself and I trusted my gut when something was wrong, because if I wouldn't have got to the hospital when I did, things could have easily went south, and my boys would not have been here, and I would not have been here for my daughters and my son. So on October 27th, once the boys were finally born, we actually couldn't go see them until way later that evening. And when we could go see them, my husband went and seen them. I couldn't go see them just because I had all kinds of medications running through my body and they were still monitoring me. And at that point, the epidural had actually ended up kicking in. It was like an hour after I gave birth that the epidural ended up kicking in. So I was bedbound for a while. Actually, that epidural lasted a long time. It did not finally wear off until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning is when it finally really wore off. So like I was stuck in the bed. But he went and seen them, and if I'm being 100% honest with y'all, it actually took me about a day and a half, almost 2 days to really go see the boys. There's no good reason for why. I was very scared. I was very scared to go see them, and I was very nervous to see them. And if I'm being honest, I was kind of trying to put it off as long as I could because I was scared that, you know, from the moment I laid my eyes on them that I was going to fall in love with them. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I've always heard horror stories from premature births and NICUs. So I was very scared that I was going to go see them and I was going to instantly fall so madly in love with them, more than I already was. And I was scared that I would lose them. And I didn't really want to go through that, go through those emotions at least. And I was just nervous. I was just nervous. So when my husband came back in the room, I could tell from the look on his face that it was a lot. But I could see in his face that it was hard to look at him. So they actually ended up taking me to postpartum about a day and a half after I gave birth to the boys, and I ended up going and seeing them. And I remember walking into the NICU, and it was nothing like I ever thought about a NICU, you know what I mean? Like, NICUs are on lockdown. For some weird reason, I just thought you looked through a glass, you know what I mean? But that's definitely not what it is in real life. So I remember going in there, and they had their cubbies right next to each other. And I was scared, like trembling, like I was so scared to lay eyes on them. But when I got in there and I seen them both for the first time, I got very emotional, obviously. And because I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew I was going to look at them and I was going to fall so madly in love with them. And that's exactly what happened. And it was scary seeing them because they had a breathing tube stuck down their throat. They had all of these wires sticking out of their bodies, and it was a lot. It was a lot. So me and my husband just kept going from the room to the NICU, from the room to the NICU, from the room to the NICU for the next day or two. And then finally they did a full team rounds on the boys, and we got to be there for it. And during all of this, I kept fighting with myself on what could I have possibly done? Like, why did this happen to me? And I remember being so mad with myself for doing this to the twins, and the whole time there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. There was nothing I did wrong to even cause it. And I just remember I was just so mean to myself. So we ended up doing the rounds. We were sitting there while they were rounding on both of the boys, and after they got done, they started to explain to us some stuff, and then she could look in my face, and I just was not crying. She looked me in my face and she could tell like I was really putting myself down. And I'll never forget it, she looked me in my face and she was like, "Miss Kendall, I just want to let you know that there is nothing that you did wrong. There is nothing you could have done to prevent this." She said, "I want you to look at it in a way of you saved your twins' lives." She was like, "If your body would not have went into labor, you three would not be here today. Y'all would not have survived." She said, "You were that sick." And I was like, and in that moment when she said those words to me, I stopped blaming myself finally. And I started to accept that this had to happen. And I'm so thankful that it did. I'm so thankful that it did happen, and my boys are here, and I'm here for my daughters and my husband and baby B, and I was here for Austin, and I'm so thankful that my body did decide to go into labor, but it was definitely a hard pill to swallow at first. So me and my husband quickly realized that there are different types of premature babies. I thought a premature baby was all premature babies, but there's different types. So what we have are micro preemie babies. I didn't even know that was a thing. So they ended up giving us the rundown on what was going on with the twins. And at that point, it was nothing serious, like nothing too serious other than just being born extremely early. And they started to describe to us what to expect in the coming days. So they were telling us about brain bleeds. And there's 4 different type of brain bleeds. There is a grade 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 being just a super small brain bleed, might not have any effect. 2 being a little bit bigger, still might not have any effect. 3 being a severe brain bleed that could have the possibility of developing hydrocephalus, and 4 being the worst of the worst. And yeah, so with those 4 brain bleeds, there's different outcomes that you can expect with your children. And so they said that within the first 3 days of life, if a brain bleed is going to occur, it's going to occur then. So they had to keep their heads extremely still. We couldn't hold them. We couldn't really touch them either for the most part. Like we could, but we were extremely scared to touch them. I was so scared to touch them, and I thought for sure I was going to cause something to happen. That's not the case. But anyways, and then on day 7, they do a head ultrasound to see if any brain bleeds occurred or any of that. So on day 6 in the NICU, everything was looking really good with the boys. Everything was just premature baby stuff. And on day 6, we actually got to hold them finally. So I held Austin and Dad held baby B. And it went so good. They handled it amazingly. They didn't have any dips in their vitals or anything like that. Like, it was amazing. I was so glad. That was like the first time I actually felt like their mom. And it was perfect. I'm so thankful that they let us hold them, and we finally did get to hold them. It was perfect. So later that evening, we got a call from the hospital, and they said that they needed to transfer Austin to a high-level NICU, and he was going to be needing immediate surgery. He was having some stomach issues going on, and I will never forget that phone call. Probably the worst phone call almost of my whole life. So they transferred him over, and they did what they call a Penrose drain. He was just having some issues where he wasn't peeing or pooping properly. So they did a Penrose drain on him, and he handled the surgery great at the other hospital. So that is why the twins were actually at 2 separate hospitals for a while, for a good couple of weeks, because Austin needed emergency surgery. Of course, me and my husband went to the hospital to go be with Austin. We needed to do some things with the hospital, figure out, you know, the whole entire arrangement, and then we needed to talk to the medical staff because they needed to talk to us. And I remember going into the NICU, and the NICU is set up so differently than the other NICU. Like, their beds are literally right beside each other, whereas in the other NICU, they kind of have their own cubby. Well, not in this one. It was like everybody's an open book in there. You know everything, and you can see all the other babies, and it's fine. But anyways, so we went in there, and I remember walking up to his bed, and his nurse kind of looked at me and Garrus, and I instantly knew something was wrong. She just looked like something was wrong. So we walked up to her. She introduced herself to us. We introduced ourselves to her, and she was like, well, I have good news and I have bad news. What do you want to start with? And I was like, good news first. Like, I want to be able to celebrate his wins if he has any wins. And she told me that the Penrose drain did perfectly. Like, it's going really good, and it's doing exactly what they want it to do. And then she told me that they did do his head ultrasound as well. And turns out he has grade 4 brain bleeds, and he had hydrocephalus setting in. And so then it wasn't too long after that, the actual neurologist came by. I was obviously an emotional wreck when the neurologist came by, because I knew that a grade 4 brain bleed was the worst of the worst. And I knew it was not good for him to have that. And one thing about a brain bleed, it's always going to be there. You can't do anything about it. There's nothing they can do about it, unfortunately. And she came in, and she was kind of describing to us like what could happen, and, you know, possibilities of whether he makes it or not, or, you know, if he does make it, what his possible outcomes could look like. And in those moments, everything was going in one ear and out the other ear. The only thing that stuck with me is he had a grade 4 brain bleed, and he had hydrocephalus was starting to set in. And I don't know if y'all know this, because I didn't. Okay, I definitely didn't. Hydrocephalus is basically when babies' heads get really, really fat and really big, like obnoxiously big. And it made sense because before the neurologist came and talked to us, we were sitting there, we was looking at Austin, and we said to each other, like, oh, his head looks like it's getting a little big. Like, his head, he's got a really big head. And we just chopped it up to him just having a big old forehead, like Garris has a big forehead. We never thought that his head being big was like a bad sign. So we ended up later having a meeting with the best of the best in that hospital for Austin, and there is a doctor who specializes in, you know, brain bleeds in the head of premature infants, and he actually was a part of this meeting, and he sat me and Garris down with all of these other doctors in this conference room, and he really thoroughly explained what exactly was going on with Austin and what the possibilities were going to look like for him, and if he was to survive this, what kind of life he may live, and all these things. And then his abdomen people, the people that are surgeons for that, they were also in there, those specialists too, and they were giving us updates on that as well. Essentially, they kind of told us, like, with the grade 4 brain bleed and hydrocephalus already progressing at a really fast rate, that his chance of survival was not that high. It was only like a 20% chance of survival, and if he did survive, he was going to have really extreme difficulties later in his life, like cerebral palsy, but to the extreme almost. Like, he would probably be bed bound or he would be wheelchair bound, and then because he had the issue with the stomach, that wasn't helping things either. So we had that meeting. It was a really, really hard meeting to have, but we came out of that meeting understanding what we needed to understand. As the weeks went on, the hydrocephalus was starting to worsen, and he was starting to have a lot more Brady's, and his stomach was not getting any better really. So they all sat us down again in a meeting, and unfortunately they told us that Austin needs a surgery on his stomach, but he won't survive the surgery. And if he doesn't get the surgery, he also won't survive. So a couple of days after that meeting, Austin ended up passing away. And what I will say is, I've never in my life ever went through anything like this, and I hope and pray to God I never have to go through it again. It was very hard during those moments, but me and my husband, we just loved on him. Nicole and Layla finally got to see him and be with him and love on him. Nicole got to hold him, and we just loved on him until he finally passed away. The only thing I really asked God whenever I knew that he was going to pass away was, Lord, if you could just let him make it until he's a month old, that would be amazing. And he did. He passed away on November 27th, Thanksgiving, at 12 o'clock at night. So he made it until he was a month old. It was very hard for me and my husband. It was a hard thing for us to deal with, and just my family in general. He actually, you know, about 20 minutes before he passed away, he actually had a little smile on his face. I looked down at him as I was holding him, and he like had a smile. In that moment, I knew that he could feel our love for him. He was a fighter until his very last breath. He literally is the strongest, most bravest person I have ever got the honor of meeting and loving. He was beautiful. He was so handsome. He was everything that was right in this world. I know that God called him home, but of course as a parent we all want to be selfish and keep our babies around us as long as we possibly can. I know that he's in a better place, and he's not in pain and suffering anymore, and he's smiling down on all of us. And I know that he's giving his brother all the strength, because a couple of days before Austin passed away, baby B got transferred to the same hospital because of the head and stuff. He actually has a grade 3 brain bleed, and hydrocephalus has started to set in with him as well at that point. And it was like the night that Austin passed away, baby B has been doing amazing. Like, he has been thriving, y'all. Baby B is doing so good. He has no issues other than a grade 3 brain bleed and hydrocephalus that started to set in, but it's not progressing any as of right now, and hasn't been for 2 weeks now, which is amazing. He is growing big. He's 3 pounds 6 ounces as of today. Today is December 17th. He is doing so flipping good. I remember hearing him cry for the first time. Like, it was the best sound in the entire world. This has all been such an experience, a very traumatic one, if I'm being so honest. It's been a lot, but it's also an experience I'm so thankful for, because God allowed me to have 31 beautiful, amazing days with Austin, and I will never, ever forget those. And I will never take them for granted. So I will say this much right here. This entire experience has been just that, an experience. This is a very long journey that we are on right now, and if anything, this is teaching me patience and how to trust in God. And when you're put in a situation where that's all you can do, then that's literally all you can do, is just trust and hope that God is going to answer your prayers. And even when he doesn't answer your prayers, it's okay. Austin's life had purpose, and he has touched so many people around me. His life has been a testimony. His life was a testimony. 31 days, it's crazy that you can build a testimony in 31 days, but he did, and he touched a lot of people's hearts, a lot of our family's hearts, a lot of, close friends in our community's hearts. And I am so thankful that God allowed us to have 31 amazing, beautiful days with him, and I wouldn't take him back for the world. And I'm thankful that God is allowing baby B to be progressing so quick right now. He is shocking his doctors every day. He shocks them every day. He has good days every day. He hasn't had a bad day yet. So I am so thankful, and I'm thankful for Austin, and I'm thankful to Austin because I know in my heart and soul, like I said, he gave his brother all of his strength the night that he passed away, because from the night that Austin passed away, baby B has been doing amazing. And I will say this much, they were definitely identical twin boys, because they are identical. They look just alike. We finally got to see what baby B looks like when they switched him from the oscillator to the CPAP machine, and yeah, he looks like his brother. They were definitely identical twins. I just want to thank y'all so much for being so supportive of me and my journey, and giving me time to be able to deal with things and handle them. And I want to thank y'all more than anything for all of the prayers that y'all have sent my way for myself, my family, the twins. Y'all have really been such a blessing, and I just want to say that we feel your prayers, and we can see God moving in our life, in our son's life, and I am so thankful for y'all. Please listen to me when I say this. If there is any advice that I can give to anybody going through pregnancy, it is this: advocate for yourself. You are your best advocate. I knew in my heart and soul that my water broke weeks prior to me delivering the twins, and I wish that I would have advocated more. I wish I would have advocated more for myself, and I wish that I would not have allowed myself to leave that hospital when I knew something was definitely off. So always advocate for yourself. You are your best advocate. Nobody on this earth can advocate for you better than you can. So with all of that being said, yeah, that is my birth story. That's what caused me to go into labor. I know this is a long video, and if you've stuck around this long, I am so thankful for you for hearing me out and listening to me and just seeing me. I am so thankful for that. This has been a very long video. My back hurts, my butt hurts. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, and I need to go pump. So I will see y'all later. Goodbye.